it up in a way that, like, okay, you're saying something that's actually factually inaccurate,
right,
according to the narrative. Now, let's be real clear. I don't necessarily think they know what's going on yet. There's a lot of weird shit going on with this.
I know.
First of all, there was that one guy who was the decoy. All right, so you got this guy who's an older guy who starts yelling out. Didn't he take his pants down?
The mic was still warm when Joe Rogan leaned forward, his voice low and razor sharp. "Something's off," he said quietly. "Too many pieces don't fit, and nobody's asking why." That one line sent shockwaves through his listeners. The moment Joe Rogan starts doubting a story, people stop scrolling and start listening. And this time, he wasn't talking about pop culture or politics, he was questioning the official story surrounding Charlie Kirk's mysterious case. His tone carried a mix of disbelief and defiance, the kind that makes every word sound like a warning. "You ever see something that looks normal but feels wrong?" he asked. "That's what this is." He began picking apart the investigation, pointing to contradictions that made even casual listeners uneasy. The rifle was supposed to be antique, yet looked brand new. The suspect, Tyler Robinson, had no history with firearms but somehow reassembled a World War I weapon with no serial number. "You expect me to believe a kid rebuilt a century-old rifle overnight?" Rogan scoffed. "That's not accident, that's arrangement." The studio fell silent. He leaned closer, voice sharp as a blade. "And what about the guy who keeps showing up? Same face. 9/11. Boston. Now here. And every time, he's arrested right after, for something completely unrelated. This time? Child porn. So now he can't talk. Convenient, right?" His co-host froze. Nobody dared to interrupt. By morning, Joe Rogan's words had become headlines. Clips exploded across the internet. Hashtags trended, debates erupted, and within hours, the case everyone thought was closed was being questioned again. Some said Rogan was a hero for speaking up. Others accused him of spreading chaos. But no one could deny it, he'd reopened something that wasn't supposed to be touched. "I don't think they even know what's really going on," he said on his next episode. "There's too much smoke for there not to be fire." And the world listened. Then Candace Owens stepped in, and turned the spark into an inferno. Unlike Rogan, she didn't ease into her claims. She came out swinging. "Everything they told you about the Charlie Kirk case is a lie," she said, slamming her hand on her desk. That one sentence broke the internet. Her followers flooded the comment sections demanding answers. She claimed Tyler Robinson was being framed. "He never even liked guns," she said. "He wasn't that person. They said it was his weapon, but it wasn't. And those bullets? They had engravings he'd never seen before. So if he didn't fire it, who did?" Her words felt like gasoline thrown on an open flame. Owens then brought up something the public hadn't heard before, an internal audit. That Charlie Kirk himself had allegedly ordered just 1 week before his death. It was meant to trace millions of dollars that had disappeared from Turning Point USA's records. "He wanted transparency," she said. "He wanted to know where the money went. And right after he started asking questions, he was gone." The crowd watching her live stream fell silent. "You still think that's a coincidence?" she asked. Now both Joe Rogan and Candace Owens were questioning the same thing. One was cautious, the other fiery, but their voices echoed the same truth. Something about the case didn't add up. Across the internet, people began piecing together every rumor, every leaked memo, every deleted clip. Conspiracy forums lit up overnight. For the first time, the official narrative was cracking. Then came the most disturbing twist, the mysterious decoy. Rogan replayed footage of the older man seen at multiple disasters. "Same posture. Same voice. Always there when chaos starts," he said. "He screams, draws attention, then disappears, and the moment the story gets traction, boom, he's arrested again. Not for what he did, but for something that ensures no one can question him." Rogan called it choreography, and millions agreed, but the more the story spread, the darker it got. Insiders whispered that after Kirk's death, Turning Point USA quietly reshuffled its leadership, new hires, deleted emails, vanished files. Then came the shocker, his wife was announced as CEO. To some, it looked like legacy. To others, it reeked of strategy. Even Rogan commented, "You gotta ask yourself, was this his wish, or someone else's plan?" He didn't accuse her. But the implication was enough to ignite another explosion of suspicion. A supposed memo dated September 2nd surfaced online, bearing Charlie Kirk's signature and referencing something called DOG-GE, an internal audit project supposedly designed to track secret funding. If the memo was real, it meant Kirk had been investigating high-level donors right before his death. Candace Owens claimed that billionaire Bill Amann was among those pressuring Kirk to back off. "He said no," she stated. "He refused their terms. And people who refuse powerful men don't last long. At that point, the lines between fact and rumor blurred completely. Every video clip, every phrase, every pause became proof of something bigger. Both Rogan and Owens had unintentionally built a storm, one that no one could stop. He was under pressure, Owens said. Financial. Political. Maybe both. But pressure like that doesn't vanish, it explodes. And that's when the story took its darkest turn. The focus shifted to Charlie Kirk's wife. Viewers analyzed every video from the funeral, every gesture, every tear. Some said her composure was admirable. Others called it cold. Her tears look rehearsed, one comment read. The clip went viral overnight. Suddenly, the grieving widow was being treated like a suspect. You don't fake pain that perfectly, someone tweeted. That's strategy. Even Joe Rogan couldn't ignore it. I'm not saying she's involved, he said, but the timing's strange. You don't just step into leadership days after tragedy. Not unless someone had that lined up. The air went still. For a moment, even Rogan sounded haunted by his own words. By then, the case had gone far beyond investigation. It wasn't about evidence anymore, it was about belief. Joe Rogan called it the age of confusion. Candace Owens called it the curtain. And the public called it what it was, a storm of noise where every whisper sounded like truth and every truth felt like manipulation. One question hung in the air like smoke after an explosion: if the audit was real, and if Charlie Kirk really planned to expose corruption, who benefited from his silence? Nobody could answer it. Nobody dared to. And that's when the world realized something even more unsettling. This wasn't just a story about one man's death. It was a story about all of us, how easily we trade truth for theories, and how fast doubt spreads once the first match is lit. After that night, the storm didn't calm, it evolved. Joe Rogan's words lingered like smoke in a room that refused to clear. Every time someone starts asking the right questions, he said, something happens to shut them down. People weren't just quoting him, they were dissecting him. His clips flooded every platform, stitched into videos, captions, and theories that stretched far beyond what he actually said. You can call it coincidence, he had warned, but I've seen enough coincidences to know choreography. That one sentence had split the internet in two, those who wanted the truth and those who were terrified to find it. Meanwhile, Candace Owens came back on screen, but her tone had changed. Gone was the fiery energy, in its place was something colder, heavier. They didn't just want this story silenced, she said. They wanted it erased. She claimed that Charlie Kirk's unfinished audit had exposed transactions that linked powerful donors to political networks and even media platforms. He was pulling at threads, she said quietly, and before he could finish, the entire tapestry came down. Her followers didn't just listen, they mobilized. Hashtags like #JusticeForCharlie and #TheAuditFiles began trending again. She looked directly into the camera. He tried to make his organization clean, she said. But you can't scrub corruption without spilling blood. The words hit the internet like an explosion. When Rogan responded, he sounded both impressed and weary. She's not wrong, he said. Every time someone with influence decides to look behind the curtain, something happens. They either vanish or we're told to stop asking questions. His co-host tried to cut to a lighter segment, but Rogan's stare froze him. You can call it paranoia, he said, but maybe paranoia is just pattern recognition. Then came the footage that reignited the chaos, the same mysterious decoy man who had been spotted at previous disasters. Rogan slowed the clip frame by frame. Same walk. Same face. Same distraction, he said, eyes narrowing. He screams, draws attention, causes panic, and right when the story builds momentum, he disappears. Then he's arrested again, for something unrelated, so nobody ever gets to hear him speak. He leaned closer to the mic. That's not bad luck. That's maintenance. The word maintenance went viral. People began calling the pattern event maintenance, the idea that chaos was being managed by design. Forums filled with theories. Was the man an agent? A plant? A pawn? Nobody could agree, but everyone felt the same chill. It all seemed too synchronized to be coincidence. Then another supposed memo appeared online, shorter, encrypted looking, but allegedly tied to Kirk's dog GE audit. One line stood out: Phase 2 approved, restricted files pending. Candace Owens called it proof. They wanted him gone before he could start Phase 2, she said. It wasn't about money anymore, it was about control. She didn't show the source, but that didn't matter. The mystery was already too big to shrink. Soon the focus shifted again, this time to Charlie Kirk's wife. Her silence, once seen as composure, now became the center of speculation. Videos from the funeral replayed endlessly. She doesn't flinch, one comment said. She doesn't break down. She steps into power like she was waiting for it. Within hours, her grief had become evidence in the court of public opinion. When Rogan addressed it, His voice carried a strange mix of caution and disbelief. "I'm not saying she's involved," he said, "but the timing's strange. The speed, the structure, it's like the pieces were waiting to fall." His tone was neutral, but the audience didn't hear neutrality, they heard suspicion. "Power doesn't wait for morning," he added softly. "And sometimes grief looks a lot like politics." Candace Owens, on the other hand, didn't hesitate. "You call it tragedy," she said sharply. "I call it transition." Her delivery was brutal but surgical. She didn't inherit a role, she replaced one. And the organization rebuilt itself overnight. That's not mourning. That's rebranding. People argued, debated, fought in comment sections, but the damage was done. The widow had become a question mark, and just as things began to settle, another layer unfolded. Anonymous accounts began posting what they called leaked communications, screenshots of supposed texts between Kirk and his donors. One line stood out, "They're watching everything." It was almost certainly fake, but it spread faster than any verified fact ever could. People wanted to believe it. Rogan sighed during his next show. "People don't care what's true anymore," he said. "They care what feels true." By then, the story had turned into something bigger, something that no one could control. Every platform was drowning in interpretations, conspiracies, and theories that twisted upon themselves. "It's not about what happened anymore," Owens said during one of her streams. "It's about how they made us think about it." Her voice trembled slightly as she said it. "They don't have to hide the truth. They just have to flood us with so many versions of it that we stop looking." That line hit deep, not because it was new, but because it sounded like resignation. Even Rogan, who once treated the case like an investigation, started to sound more like a philosopher. "We've turned into detectives for a mystery that may not even exist," he said quietly. "Maybe the real manipulation is making us chase ghosts while the real story hides in plain sight." Weeks turned into months. The frenzy slowed but never stopped. People still whispered about the missing audit, the Phase 2 memo, and the quiet way Turning Point USA moved on without ever addressing the unanswered questions. The narrative didn't fade, it evolved, becoming myth. "This story stopped being about Charlie Kirk a long time ago," Rogan said in his final segment. "Now it's about us. About how fast we forget and how easily we believe." When he said that, the room fell still. "Maybe the truth isn't missing," he said softly. "Maybe it's buried under the noise we created." His co-host said nothing. For a moment, Rogan looked genuinely haunted. "That's how truth dies," he whispered, not in silence, but in noise. A few days later, Candace Owens released what she called her final statement. The energy was gone. Her voice was steady but softer, almost weary. "If every time we find an answer, 2 new questions appear," she said, "maybe the truth doesn't want to be found." She paused, then added quietly, "Maybe it's not about what happened, maybe it's about what they made us feel about it." That was the moment her audience stopped commenting and just listened, and that's where it all ended, not with proof, not with justice, but with perspective. The Charlie Kirk story had stopped being a headline and turned into a mirror, one that showed how fragile truth has become in the age of endless noise. Between Joe Rogan's calm disbelief and Candace Owens' fiery conviction, one thing became certain: people no longer trust what they see. They trust the version that hurts the most, because pain feels more real than facts ever could. In the end, the microphones turned off, the lights dimmed, and the hashtags faded, but the question stayed. Who silences the truth? Who benefits from confusion? And how many stories like Charlie Kirk's vanish every day, rewritten before we even realize it? Because in this world, the truth doesn't die quietly. It drowns in echoes, and we're the ones still listening.